Hello everyone, I have Foobar here today with me, an amazing founder in our Web3 space. Look forward to our conversation, Foobar. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, great to be here.
Let's maybe ease into this a little bit with how things got started, with Delegate. At that time you were going with Delegate Cash name, I think. How did you stumble on this value proposition and found that it would be worth executing on?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. I got my crypto start in the DeFi world. And so I got to see really smart people building out very complex protocols. But then as stuff grew and boomed in the 2021 bull run, I noticed the average crypto user was getting less and less sophisticated just by virtue of growth and the early adopter S-curve, at the same time that the protocols were getting more and more complex. So instead of settling on product market fit, you actually had the products and the users moving further away from each other. So, and it seemed like everyone took one of two paths. Either yell at everyone to get really smart, which is not a sustainable approach in the long run.
Don't you know how to manage your private keys already? It's super simple.
Yeah, just shaming is not a sustainable growth strategy, it seems. And the other approach was, so you have get everyone to be really smart, and the other end of the approach is treat everyone like they're really dumb.
Yeah.
I will custody your money for you. I'll do everything. Trust me. That obviously failed in the FTX and Celsius and whatnot blow-ups. So my question was, is there something in the middle that preserves all the benefits of crypto and decentralization and self-custody, but is acceptable to the average person?
Right.
Like I could introduce my mother to this, and she would be able to use it and not mess up.
Right.
So as I looked around the space, you had a lot of really interesting people building out what I call the antivirus tools of the world on security. We're going to inspect your transaction before it goes out. We'll give you big red warning signs if something's about to go wrong. We'll pay big attention to the protocol too, and we can shut that down if something's going hard.
Yeah, you'll be safe with us, but trust us.
Yeah, exactly. Or like these are 95%. They have a 95% positive rate, but they still miss ones. And the issue with crypto is if you miss the big one, that's that. So the question for me was, can you build something that's secure by default and you can't mess it up, compared to can you try to catch half the hacks?
Yeah.
And that's what Delegate grew out of, is that the fundamental principle is self-custody in your own wallet. But you really need various gradations of this.
Yeah.
You don't store, like I have different levels of security for a $1 bill and the deed to my house. So, and it's the same way in crypto. Like you've got your Bitcoin cold stack, and then you've got some little gaming item you just got today that's worth a couple pennies. And these should be treated differently.
Of course. So going back in time to that point where the two ends of the spectrum were the way you described, right? Treat them as dumb, collect their money, and assume you, as a centralized entity, you can do a better job. And then yell at them, hey, you don't even know how to manage your private keys. It's so simple. Just get a hardware device that you can easily lose and, make everything you can, do everything you can to not lose it. Secure a paper copy of it, put it in a place that is unconfiscatable, go figure it out yourself, you're smart enough. And so these two ends of the spectrum, and then something in between is necessary. What else was happening at that time in terms of the maybe later comer players may not have been there, the account abstractions, the social recovery wallets? What was the landscape at that time?
Yeah, the landscape was very NFT focused still. And I'd say it's a strong use case, but it's not quite as overwhelmingly NFTs as much as it was back then. You had this combination of very clear needs. You had airdrops and whitelists and token gated claims and reputation leaderboards happening every single day, every single week. And every time a new project hyped launch came out, like without fail, an hour later, there'd be some very sad sob story, often from Bored Ape, explaining how they'd lost their life savings because they got a little too excited and clicked the wrong link, got fooled by a phishing scam or whatnot. So we had a very clear initial go-to-market of this fixes airdrops, this fixes whitelist mints. So we, ended up developing the protocol, launching it early fall, and within weeks had a first adopter. There was a Halloween gift bag that Forgotten Runes gave out that was targeting not just their own community, but I think 6 or 7 different of the top communities across crypto. So CryptoPunks, Apes, Azukis, and several other ones.
Yeah.
So they had a doubly tricky challenge of they wanted to give out this thing to their community, but they also wanted a much broader, rightfully skeptical group to try them out. And they integrated us, it went perfectly, and I think that served as a powerful example for a lot of others to follow.
So that was 2022, and we are only a year into that journey, and you've already had stellar traction.
Yeah, exactly. So we've seen about, I think, over 150 project integrations so far. And crypto's a very rough B2B space, so that seems like we're in a league of us and Uniswap on that front of can you really build something useful enough but simple enough that other people willingly build on top.
Yeah.
And we've seen an incredible amount of value secured. If you look at the cold wallets that have signed up for the registry, oftentimes we're the only app that they're willing to use. And there's about $500 million worth at today's prices that's secured by that.
Awesome.
So, yeah, fun to see the growth.
Think about, okay, so here we are, where are we headed? And I like to think of it in the language of what's the vision. If I were to give this company a name, 3 or 4 years later, what would it be? And I think of this as the institutor, which is a funny way to say it, I suppose. But really the idea is you're instituting definitions and declarations of rights of assets. And you're proposing them as standards to the community for different decentralized applications, NFT communities, to then adapt them. Yes, this is actually a well-defined right that can coexist with our assets, and we can pick and choose from the menu of the previously instituted definitions and apply them to our assets. Am I onto something there?
Yeah.
Is that sort of how you're thinking about it? Where is Delegate going to be like 4 or 5 years from now?
So, is that the right way to frame it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. A couple other lenses or metaphors to look at it through.
Yeah.
I think crypto power of attorney is a really powerful one.
Oh, yeah.
Where the assets themselves remain safe and secure, but you give somebody else the rights to act on them for a select few things.
Yeah.
And then I think as we've expanded our vision from just a personal tooling helper into an institutional enterprise grade sort of software, that's incredibly compelling. Because you often have, say you're managing $100 million worth of assets on chain. Obviously this has to be tightly safeguarded, who can do what.
Right.
But the status quo is very much all or nothing. If you give somebody the private key, they can take all the money. And so stuff gets locked down quite aggressively. But then these firms and these DAOs and these individuals are missing out on opportunities for serious on-chain actions, whether that's governance, we've seen several impactful votes there, whether that's being able to interact and beta test in the latest games. So you can do, I think the beauty of what we've built is you can use it very simply. You can just say wallet A to wallet B, and that's that. But you can also do very granular access control. You can say wallet A for 10 million uni tokens gets delegated to wallet B for this specific governance app, in theory. And then that meshes nicely the granular with the simple. So crypto power of attorney, I think, is a great way of looking at it. And something that we're growing into, we've got some exciting upcoming products aimed at this, is programmable identity. To date, when people think of identity and things like ENS, it's very much purely an aesthetic game. You get a little string of characters, maybe you can flip it on secondary markets, and maybe it gets labeled on some off-chain tool like Etherscan. But that's the extent of it. If I've got foobar.eth and gaming.foobar.eth, a game I'm trying to play doesn't know about my ENS subdomain. It can't, even if it tried, it couldn't do anything with it. So I'm very excited now that we've shown we can build network effects on these interconnected graphs of wallets and users and identities. Can we plug that into really powerful cross-chain, multi-wallet on-chain usable, programmable identity standard.
Right.
So
So
I'm
that
excited about that.
alignment then sparks the imagination around, oh, maybe we could do the equivalent of the corporate authority lists
Yeah,
of
exactly.
for a company in a
Uh-huh.
DAO, and give members of a DAO specific rules as to what they can do with their voting powers. And oh,
Yeah.
the community has decided you're an expert in recruiting X kind of service provider, but not Y kind of service provider on, let's say, a voting platform. And that leads to predetermined coordination steps that can accelerate, taking community action faster later. Very cool. So in essence, then, 4 years from now is sort of where I'm trying to get to. What happens there in the Web3 community? There are many DAOs, many assets. Where are some of the functions and features you anticipate would be mostly adopted then?
Ideally, we've cracked the NFT use case quite well, but I think people are underestimating what we have to offer on the DeFi side as well. 4 or 5 years from now, I see us tightly integrated into the institutional management scene, and the institutional management has been able to move on chain because of that, while maintaining all the benefits of lockdown cold vault storage on that front. The corollary to that, I think DAOs become far more powerful when you're able to enable granular roles, granular permissioning.
Yeah.
Say like you are the treasury manager, you're allowed to shift allocations of assets within this DeFi protocol, but you're not allowed to withdraw the funds. That's a very powerful tooling. So, and a common question we get on this front is usually from smart devs.
Oh, you can make your own random token unipool and allocate to that.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I want this specific arbitrary logic, I can just hard code it into my protocol.
Yeah.
What do I need you for? And the answer there is that people need to focus on their core competencies, which are how do you make an excellent DeFi protocol? And users get very, very tired very quickly of having to do the same repetitive actions over and over again.
Yeah.
How many times you don't want to be setting config files. You want to do it once and set it and forget it. And so if we can unify around a cohesive standard that applies to where you take one on-chain action, it applies to a wide swath of DeFi protocols, applies to a wide swath of NFT protocols, works for governance, works for gaming, is a cohesive identity standard as well, then users love this. It's kind of funny. When an app has not integrated Delegate, there's often this grassroots effort, not even coming from us, just from users demanding this support because they don't want to learn a new bespoke system.
Right.
So ideally, we've helped the institutional players move on chain, do more with what they've already got, and also just enable the scope of what DAOs can do. And on the individual level, you've got useful identity.
Yeah. So on-chain fund management, is there a way where now whoever's a good trader can be delegated ability to trade assets on behalf of other users?
Yeah, there are a couple protocols that are heading in that direction. Like one that's a little more bespoke built, they're not quite using us yet, is STFX, for example, where you can essentially deposit into trader vaults, and then that vault tracks their performance, and you get a payout based on that. But that's, I think, a simulation of something that could be made far simpler by integrating Delegate, for example. So we're seeing the green shoots of this sprout up. We just shipped Delegate V2 about a month ago, which adds aggressive support for fungible tokens, where we were previously focused just purely on NFTs. So it takes a little time for these protocols to come to market and mature.
Yeah.
But yeah, and lots of exciting conversations there.
That's awesome. So now that we are in a place where it's relatively metastable and we can think about where we're going to be 4 years from now, really curious, in the last close to 2 years now, what were some of the challenges that you faced that could be existential deal killers? We have to get this right or we'll die, kind of life-threatening events for the company. And they may have been spanning maybe weeks or months. It doesn't have to be like, oh, we got, a ransomware kind of thing, immediately acute. Really curious It could be compliance, it could be talent, partnerships, challenges that are probably not unique to you, but most of us aren't really sharing that. So wanted to ask this for cross-learning and sharing scar tissue with other founders.
That's a great question. Thinking how to frame it properly while being respectful of all involved. So I think an interesting aspect of crypto is just aggressively cyclical. The strategies that are EV maximizing in the bull market run you bankrupt in the bear, and the survival strategies in the bear often get you left behind in the bull. So you have to be highly adaptive and comfortable with a lot of ambiguity. So what that translates to for us is a very power law skewed. I mentioned earlier we have 100 plus B2B integrations we've landed already. But when I look at those, there are probably the top 5 that have moved the needle and delivered 90% of the impact, both in terms of other people being able to follow, bringing new users to us, trying out new use cases and whatnot. So, and as I think about the experience of landing those and helping them through, it takes a lot of courage for these third parties to try something new. Everyone's always overwhelmed. Everyone's always overbooked. And if your docs aren't well written, then it seems like an insurmountable challenge to add a new dependency. It's a little ironic because I preach a very dependency-free approach internally so that we can be as robust as possible. But then I'm asking others to have a dependency on us. So in terms of...
But it's not terrible because the more independent you can be, the more reliable you can, because then the propagation of errors aren't going to lead to downstream implications for your users.
And we've also developed a, I think, multi-pronged robust approach. Like we are fully immutable. We couldn't rug or change the protocol even if we wanted to. And on top of that, you can do direct on-chain querying. We provide a REST API. We provide a JavaScript API. All this is open source. But to answer your original question, there was one major integration 6-ish months ago or so where we'd been talking for quite a while, and then I woke up one day to see on Twitter their message, "We're launching tomorrow," like their biggest annual event of the year. And they just hadn't told us. I was like, hey, what did all this groundwork, was it for nothing? And they were just they had some tight constraints on their end, and they had to cut nearly everything.
So it doesn't only happen with countries where the president has to cut the red ribbon and the engineering firm didn't do the review.
So I went to work, I reached out to them, they were very, very hesitant, but there was a strong enough community. I think somebody posted a tweet with 1,000 likes, essentially demanding that they integrate this. And I was flying over the weekend at the time. Remember, like, I've got my laptop. I'm hunched over the very small worst seat in the plane, try to code things up on this tiny little screen so I could help him in time. I think I was up for 36 hours straight or something like that, helping push this to the finish line. And got it out for him, worked like a charm. We ended up driving near 8 figures of additional revenue on their side.
Just because the assets that they were selling are delegable.
Exactly. You've got, I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's usually between 20 and 40% of users opt to use delegation. But if you look at actual asset values, it's skewed towards more 60 to 80% of the actual money flowing through things. Because the largest whales, Dingaling, DC Investor, people like these, have, well, DC at least has publicly stated he refuses to interact with any protocol that doesn't have Delegate. So it's a bit like decentralized SOC 3 compliance or something, not enforced by any central party, but just enforced
demanded by community.
Just enforced by the users. The only way you're getting my money or my attention or my assets is if you make it safe for me. So we were able to drive massive growth for them. Huge awareness for us. They've since paid it back quite helpfully in kind. But that's the kind of thing where...
It was like a platform changer, very sharp event, 36 hours, and
Yeah,
you leveled
exactly. And
up.
that I'd say that day drove more results than the past 2 months
Oh, wow.
of like much smaller things that we had done, greater in number but smaller in impact.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of, I think, small, big door turning on a small hinge, where if I just hadn't been on top of my game that day, or we hadn't quite made it land, then we would have missed out on both that and also the compounding growth that's come from it. So I think and then there have also been experiences where, like, I do wish I had a redo, for example. So I've been able to see both sides, but it's interesting to see just how high leverage in the impact sense, not the financial sense, just a couple people can be.
Yeah.
It's both empowering and kind of terrifying and
Sure.
exhausting when you see like the direct quality of your day-to-day work reflected in what happens the next day. The best path to improvement is just fast feedback cycles, and there's nothing like crypto for people letting you know what they think.
Yeah, I hear you. So trying to make this maybe a little bit more translatable across different case
that
stories.
was a little vague.
No, no need to apologize at all. I'm just thinking there are probably multiple threads here. One is there will come a time when, all the work you put into a feature or a product has to be compressed into a really tight timeline, and just making sure that you care about its release even more than the customer and getting it to work is probably a good event to kind of be aware of and expect, and not, they're launching without us, and just accept it.
Yeah. I'd say the human mind is trained to expect linear output from linear effort. The expected thing that doesn't actually happen is you have something to deliver in 3 months, you make a 3-month plan, you do 1% of it every day, and in 3 months it's done. And that's that. What actually happens in the real world is you do a lot of puttering and sputtering around and false starts and go in the wrong direction for 3 months, and nothing happens, and it seems like a complete waste. And then you have like a 2-week burst where you have to get something out the door, and you take some of the random learnings scattered from the false paths, and you're able to execute faster when you need to, only because you failed before.
Right.
And so it's often similar output to what you expected, but it's highly nonlinear. Instead of being like this, it's like...
Yeah, totally.
So,
So being prepared for that chaotic but finally productive journey, and saying, it's the way it sometimes has to be, is helpful, kind of a mental framework to allow further flourishing of the
I think
entrepreneurial
it's just
team.
helpful in terms of framing your own expectations and emotional energy more than anything. If you have key to happiness is low expectations. And so if you think that if you don't realize that ebbs and flows are normal, then you get too hard on yourself when things are going poorly, and you get too high on your own supply when they're going well, and both lead to poor decision making.
Okay, so tell me a case where there was a poor decision making, where you were too high on your own supply.
Me never. Well, a dear friend once. I have to think of it. I'm very good at selective memory.
Yes, I'm probably suffering from the same. I never make a wrong decision. I wasn't there when that decision was made.
You need a little bit of that. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and it was funny. Like we were both reminiscing on something that happened not too long ago, like a year prior.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I had acted perfectly.
Yeah.
And the friend was the one who had like made the mistakes. And in the friend's mind, I was the one who had screwed everything up. And we weren't even able to figure out what the actual result was. But
wow. Okay, that's cool.
But I think that maybe a recent big learning failure mental model adjustment is that think people in organizations and just ways of working and being are a lot more different are just different from each other. There's this tendency to try to fit everybody into a one-size-fits-all approach. Like this flow very clearly like closed A and B, therefore we shouldn't deviate from it for C. But then I think sometimes there are humbling experiences where C needs something completely different. And so yeah, an interesting experience lately where I think we've been perhaps like too regimented in pursuing a specific opportunity. And they needed a little more flexibility, and we didn't quite realize that until too late. So yeah, just understanding where people are coming from, I think, is always a timeless lesson that trying to ingrain.
You were trying to master an onboarding process yourself and being particular about it, so it could be easily repeated. But in this case, you needed the flex on it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's worked incredibly well for us. The only way to scale, like at our current size, is to have repeatable flows that people can easily master. And that has worked for most people. But I think we got a little too comfortable in that and didn't adjust or pay enough attention when we needed to.
Is this something you're taking more grand in that from now on, customers are looking to be more flexible in how they're onboarding? Or was it, there are some customers from time to time that will want more flexibility, so if we want to get their business, we should adjust?
Yeah,
how are you thinking?
I think it's more idiosyncratic. Like it's a 90%, 10% split. For most people, do not want to hop on a call, do not want to be handheld. They just want to do their thing and be done with it. I'm very much the same way. Yeah. If you can send me a 2-minute demo video, I'll check it out, but I will not book on your Calendly. Yeah. But even if that's the majority of people, that's not all of them. So I don't think I think it's just a matter of better gauging where people are coming from.
I hear you. So, any legal actions, things going sour, loss of clients, crazy stories that you handled?
Let me think of it. Yeah. But I can give you something juicy.
A severe disagreement with a partner, co-founder that you've worked through, or having to shift jurisdiction, having to change bank accounts, having to change legal, accounting, key service providers, having to pivot a model, having to upgrade a specific and core smart contract that could have been treacherous and dangerous that you didn't.
Yeah. I've got plenty of interesting legal stories, but I don't know if this is an appropriate forum to share them. I've got plenty of interesting personnel stories, but once again, want to be respectful of things that happen internally and have been resolved amicably. Maybe an interesting one. So pre-Delegate days, I did everything. Had a very brief foray in which I did everything wrong. And I think the benefit of that was I managed to pack so many mistakes into such a short period of time that they were both vivid and self-contained. And I was able to rapidly correct them the next go around. But I think one mistake I made previously is hiring too many people who weren't committed enough. There's this book, like The Mythical Man Month, about programming written back in the 1970s, I think, where there was a very much industrial revolution factory approach to coding and development. There's 160 hours of work to be done. So we can either have one person do it in 4 weeks, or we can have 4 people do it in 1 week, or we can have 10 people do it in like 3 days.
Yes, because we're just spout filling pools.
Yeah, because you're just it's like mowing lawns or farming or anything that can be trivially parallelized. Yeah. And that, obviously is not true in the extreme. There's still this tendency, I think, when things are going slower than you'd like, to just decide that the solution is more people and more people now. Yeah. And on that front.
And that's why you decided to call your next venture Delegate, where you were, I will do a better job with delegating.
Exactly. I remember how to delegate. So on that front, it was interesting because we had lots and lots of people doing part-time, but the communication overhead was so high that they spend all their time arguing with each other. Well, and me too.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough time to think deeply and really make the right decisions on these things. So I feel like what I've done to course correct on that front has been find the absolute highest quality people you can, treat them extremely well, and just when everybody's at the top of their game, it's fun.
Yeah.
Like there's just something satisfying about teamwork where like person on your left is pushing hard, person on your right is pushing hard, you're doing the same. So that's a big takeaway is you can't skimp on quality people.
Right. So tell me about how, like I'm starting something new today and I want to build a high quality team like you have. Tell me how I can do that.
It's a good question. I'd say somewhat intentionally, but I'm in a healthy spot of having large distribution, large audience. I've been able, but also a specific genre. Like I've got a large body of technical writings, like wrote a piece on Ethereum's transition to proof of stake that hit #1 on Hacker News for like a day straight.
Yeah.
And really went deep into the details of every little bit on that front. So it's both distribution, but distribution of what I try to focus on is high quality material. Now people are going to laugh because they're going to go to my Twitter feed and see like seven very seven very stupid memes.
Or you retweeted Sam.
Yes, or retweeting SBF tweets from a year ago.
Oh.
So
I was talking about this, Sam.
Ah, yes. But I think that like in the first 2 employees for Delegate, both reached out to me.
Yeah.
Through Twitter pipeline. So that's a novel. That's not the only way to do it. Like we've since found amazing contractors through traditional channels. I think one of our best guys came from a JavaScript specific Discord.
Yeah.
There's real benefit when you kind of have a reputation for high quality stuff.
I hear you. So the how is specific genre reputation, being in the right discords and being known in Twitter.
Yeah, I think it's a very small space in crypto still.
Yeah.
So that's I don't know how repeatable of an approach that is, but it's definitely something I've come at intentionally. A couple years back when I had 0 reach, 0 distribution, shipped a pretty fun technical project that got immediately scooped and forked by someone with better reach than me. And I just vowed that would never happen again. If you build good tech, you have an obligation to help the world know about it. Yeah. And so yeah, it's been intentional building an audience and whatnot, and it's paid off in a variety of ways. Like you'd expect it to be beneficial for like product announcements, which it is, but very few people think about that as being hiring pipeline as well. And I'd say that's been even more impactful for us on our side.
I hear you. Great. Any closing thoughts?
Time to retweet Sam.
I don't know if that's good
for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.